Hello guys, we're gonna start with topic 3 today, which is referring to equation of a line, and this is part of module 1 of your course of Math 4. So, what? You may be thinking, what is an equation? Equation means that something is equal to something else, because we are using the equal, because it's using the equal sign, okay? Equal or equi means it's something it's equal, okay? So an equation simply says that two values that are expressed at one side and the other side of the equal sign have the same value. Okay. The formal definition for this is that an equation it's a mathematical expression of two equal values, and each one of these values is expressed at each side of the equal sign. So we have a value on the left and a value on the right. Okay. Hey! My dogs are killing each other. Okay. So examples of equations. You can think of these equations that I'm showing right here in the presentation, and one of them you can think of the funny one that it's in here about the cat. So a cat plus a fish, either alive or dead, it's gonna equal to the skeleton of a fish, because the cat it's usually gonna eat it. Okay. Some of these equations may seem really difficult, okay, but they may not really be so difficult if you start looking into them and try to see what they are trying to represent. But the important thing here to remember is that both sides are going to be equal, okay? And I wanted to include here a cool graph of how NASA uses some of the physics and mathematics and other kind of equations to calculate different things that they need to calculate in order to send rockets to the space and bring them back safely, or maybe not safely, but when people is involved, they want to bring them back safely, correct? Some of the values that you see here, you already know. You know the equal sign, you know the minus sign, you know that here we have a division or a ratio, which is the same. We have exponents, we have the inverse tangent, which you already know what it means. It means that it's calculating a value of an angle of a certain quantity that we want to use later on, okay? We have square roots and so on. So if you see, they may seem a little bit complicated, but once you start looking into them as values that need to be resolved in order to be finding some other things, you can think that they are not so difficult. So let's move into the equation of a line. And we find that when the change in the x's and the y's, or the ratio between the change of the y's and the x's, is constant, then the graph is going to describe a straight line. This means that the slope is going to be constant. So it doesn't matter if you take one point at the top of the same line and one point that it's way down over the same line. The slope is always going to be constant. If you take two inner points, then the slope is going to be also constant. It's going to be the same slope. So when you have this situation, we are talking about the straight line. How you calculate the slope? Well, the slope, remember that it's defined as the change of the y's divided by the change in the x's. And here your teacher, which is very nice to you, put the equation for the calculation of the slope. The slope is represented with an m, and it simply is the differences between the y's divided by the differences between the x's. Okay. And one important thing, guys, the vertical lines don't have a slope. This is an undefined value because the value or the slope goes all the way up and down, and it doesn't end. So the slope is going to be undefined. Okay. So the first thing to recognize is that if we have an equation, or you see an equation that has two variables, x and y, and it doesn't have any exponents or any weird things in it, it's going to be a linear equation. A linear equation means that it's going to describe a line. Okay. There are different forms to express the equation of a line. The first one is when you already have the equation, maybe not in this same form, but you're gonna use it in order to find the values of the intercept, or you have the intercept value of the y-axis, and I'm gonna explain it a little bit in a couple of seconds. So the formula it's called the slope intercept equation, and it's described as this: y equals mx plus b, where m, you already know what it is the slope, okay, which is the difference or the ratio between the difference of the y's over the difference of the x's, multiplying the x plus b, and b, it's gonna be the point where the x crosses the y-axis, okay, so it can be from minus infinite to infinite, okay, you can have a line crossing at a point very high at the 0 point or the origin, or at some very negative value, okay. For this equation to be used, you need to know the x and the y's values, or the coordinate values, because you cannot calculate the m value if you don't have those values, okay. For this type of equation, you can also be asked to find the linear equation in its standard form from a given equality. This means they are going to give something like this to you, involving an x and a y, and you have to convert it to the standard form. This first slope intercept equation, it's also called the standard form of a linear equation. So what you have to do is try to figure out or work in order to put the y's at the left, then put the x's first with the m value if there is some m value to put in there, and then the b value, okay. So in this case, we're dropping the x to the other side, applying the inverse operation, which is the subtraction and addition. The inverse is the subtraction, and then I'm leaving there the 2, which is already on the right side of the equation. With this form, you can work out to sketch graphs. In this other form, it's more difficult for you to be able to do so, and anyway, you have to transform it to this way in order to be able to sketch it, okay. The other form, it's called point slope, and this is because you have the slope and you have a point of reference, okay. Anyways, you need to know the x's and the y's, because you have to calculate the slope in order to be able to use this equation. So the form of the equation is y minus 1 y1, it's equal to m that multiplies x minus x1. The m is going to be the slope, which you know how to calculate. Y1 is going to be the y value of one of the coordinates points that are given to you, okay? And the x1, it's going to be the x value of that same point, okay? So if you have a point here and a point here, you're going to use the x and the y's of one of those points. You cannot use the x from here and the y from here, or vice versa. You have to use the same point of reference, okay? We're going to see a little example of how to use this. And when you need to be a little bit more formal and you don't have the slope or the way to calculate the slope, and you are asked to find the slope and the y-intercept, you're going to use this form of equation that it's called the general form. The general form has 3 terms, which is ax plus by plus c, it's equal to 0. Here the x and the y's represent variables, a, b, and c represent real numbers. But however, a and b, both at the same time, cannot be 0. They have to be either one of them has to have some value. If the a has a 0 value, then the line is horizontal. If the b has a 0 value, then the line is vertical, because you're going to be talking about a parallel line to one of the axes that, depending on these variables, it's going to be either the y-axis or the x-axis, okay? And I'm gonna give you quick tips on the slopes. When the slope goes from the negative numbers to the positive numbers in an upward direction, then the slope is said to be positive. When you have the opposite thing, when the line goes from the positive ones to the negative ones, then the slope is gonna be negative. And of course, you can have the lines of the slopes being horizontal. In this case, when the line is going parallel to the x-axis, and you can have it undefined when we have a line that is parallel to the y-axis. This is just exactly as the inverse tangent of 90 degrees behaves, because when you have that, the tangent is undefined. Exactly the same happens with this line, because the slope goes on and on and on and on, and you don't have a definition for it, okay? So guys, I invite you to revise the examples in Blackboard. They are very easy, they are very detailed, and you can follow them. And if not, you can talk to me and come to mentoring sessions if you need so, and we will be speaking soon in class. Merci beaucoup. See you later, guys. Thank you.